Hello. Happy Saturday. Happy belated live streaming time on Saturday. So, thank you for waiting. I got a little off schedule this morning, so sorry I had to postpone it an hour, but thanks for your patience. And welcome to our Saturday live stream. As you can see, I did not tackle the other ear over the week. I think I have the best intentions, but follow through leaves something to be desired. I've just been really busy with school and stuff, and obviously this week the holidays. So we're just going to hop in. I might address it a little bit, or I might start fiddling around with it just for my warm-up. But my intentions today are to start to work back into the face a little bit more and just start refining things and pulling out those more subtle forms. I'm debating about whether or not I want to make this eye more scrunchy. I was looking at pictures this morning. I can't decide if I like it at its current scrunchiness level, if I want it to go a little bit more scrunchy. Anyway, so that's where we're at. We'll just dive in. And I guess I'm going to tackle the scrunchiness factor first. But I'm not digging that. I'm just kind of lightly laying on some clay to see if I like it. I think it's this form here that I'm struggling with, that I just don't, I think it goes in too far. I want it to come out a little bit more. And again, we're talking like 1/8 of an inch tops, but I think it's probably even smaller than that. And I got my new tools from Ken's Tools, so less moaning about that. As always, Ken is super responsive and helpful, so I really can't say enough nice things about him. He does not sponsor this live stream or my Patreon for that matter, but he does really make a good tool. So I'm gonna hawk his goods. I hope you all had a great holiday, those of you in the U.S. Those of you not in the U.S., I hope you had a great Thursday. I know that I am still recovering from gorging myself on Thursday. And then a secondary gorge yesterday, and this morning for that matter. I do like holidays that revolve around eating. So I'm just bulking this up a little bit and then using my guitar string tool to sort of smooth out the forms a little bit and make sure that they're embedded. So when I say like I'm going to try and add some more nuance to these forms, it means I'm just going to, this is not going to be a very dramatic live stream. I'm not going to be like slapping down clay or anything, but it's going to be a lot of just fiddling with the forms and going back and forth and seeing if I like it or not. This I find is like a highly intuitive process, though it's very much informed by things that I've seen in life. Like I know I was talking a little bit like about how I added this little tuck here, and it was kind of based on watching Anthony Starr and The Boys. That he's got these little folds around his eyes that I really enjoyed, and I wanted to work them into my sculpt a little bit. Stuff like that. Trying to find those little nuances, little moments in your sculpture. And I might add in some more wrinkles. I'm still debating whether or not I want to put in a scar or not. I feel like scars are kind of cliche on these type of characters, like fighters and fantasy characters, especially like the bad guys, supposedly. Though I always feel like bad guy is a relative term. Um, so like if there is a Gnoll, like yeah, he might have some scars from battles, but is that cliche or is that just the way things were back then? I don't know. There's certainly like the whole cliche scar across the eye, look, but there's a reason it's popular. A lot of people like it and use it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. So I don't know. I'm kind of still debating about that. There's Poe on cue saying, "Happy Saturday, y'all." And I know I like go back and forth with a lot of like smoothing with the alcohol and then carving it back up again. So that's just my process. I mean, there's probably a better way to do it, but I don't know what it is. If I wait till the end to smooth it out, then I find that I miss a lot of that subtlety that I'm looking for, that I sort of need to see where I'm at in order to put it in. I don't know, I'm still kind of on the fence about that. Maybe it just needs more of, they have these little splotches here, and dogs and cats have those where their little eye whiskers come out of. Maybe I need to bulk that up a little bit. That might do it. Eye whiskers. There's probably a scientific term for those, but I don't know what it is. I don't know how I feel. Like I got this little subtle fold here, like a secondary subtle fold. I don't know if you can see it right here. And I kind of like it, but I kind of don't like it, so debating whether or not I want to clay it up a little bit more. Take it out. I almost feel like this line here might be a little bit too dramatic. So I might take that down a little bit too. I'm trying not to, mess up the secondary forms so much right yet, but Hmm. This is very unbalanced, and I'm trying to figure out why. It's like this is this form here. And this should maybe come back a little bit more. Hang on, I gotta break out the heavier duty tools. I'm a mature adult, sorry. Yeah, I don't know if I like this wrinkle right here, because this side is going to be the more relaxed side, and it's almost equally as lumpy as the other side. But I'm going to take it out, and then I'm going to go, oh, I really liked it better in. So that's why I say like this is a lot of back and forth. And obviously I don't want it to be like actually symmetrical, because there is two very different expressions going on, like in terms of the eye on either side of the face. So I don't want it to be symmetrical, because then it'll look really goofy. But I need the anatomy to be, what's the word I want? Congruous? Congruous? I don't know how you pronounce that. On both sides. Congruent? Is that right? So even if this side is more relaxed, it still needs to have that same anatomy. It just needs to not be as perhaps defined. This is why expression studies are fun and healthy. Maybe we should do those later. You know, I did that project, oh god, like 2 years ago? 4 years now? I think it was 4 years ago, god. Where I sculpted 100 heads in 100 days. And each head was made of polymer clay. And I sculpted one a day, and I tried to spend no more than like 2 or at the most 3 hours on it. And I did it. I did 100 days. Some of them were better than others. I actually ended up selling most of them, which is good. So a lot of people have them in their collection, which is kind of nice. I always like, you know, I have this impulse to want to hang on to things, but I'm always so happy when people want my work in their, you know, around them, that they want it in their collection. That, to me, that always just makes me so happy that something, I guess, moves somebody enough that they want it around them. So I do sell my work a lot, just because, you know, with me, it's just going to bother me, so I'll see everything that's wrong with it. But if someone else really enjoys it, you know, that makes me really happy that they enjoy it. Anyway, a little aside there. But yeah, I did that 100 heads, and a lot of it ended up being studies in expression and trying to see how much I could push expression on these little tiny clay heads. Because they were, you know, for the most part, about the size of a golf ball. It was a fun practice. Stressful. And I didn't get much else done. That was why I wouldn't want to do it again, because I had this idea that it was going to be something I could work on while like I was watching TV at night, but I had this very disillusioned idea that I watch TV at night, because I don't. We usually watch a little bit of TV while we're eating dinner, or immediately afterwards as a family. But I have a really hard time sitting still for the most part, so I don't actually watch the TV all that long. So my idea was that I was going to use this 100 heads thing as something I do while I was watching TV at night, but I don't really watch that much TV at night. So it ended up being this whole big thing, which in a way was good. It was a good exercise, and I'm glad I did it. But it was exhausting. Again, if anyone's like tuning in on the live stream, you can ask questions in the chat window, and I do have it up in front of me. I think it's got a little bit of a time delay on it, so I won't answer it immediately, but also I may not see it immediately. But I am checking it, so if you ever have any questions or want to respond to something I said, let me know. I am looking. Or if you're too shy for chat, you can always let me know after the fact in the Patreon comments. So I'm just kind of right now feeling out how I want these wrinkles. There should be some wrinkles here. I have all these pictures of hyenas yawning, and they get this really deep divot right here. And I kind of want to bring that in. So here's my reference. So there's like that deep divot right in the nose right there. Hopefully that shows up on the camera. I just want to pull that out a little bit more. But you're getting lots of hms and hms today. And probably some errant groans because I'm a little sore from running. So I want this to be a little bit more snarly, I guess. And this is where I'm talking about like getting these like sort of little subtle forms. Like I'm seeing a lot of little subtle wrinkles. I want to bring those in here. Subtle little face wrinkles that happen. Crinkles, I guess. I mean, it's going to be exaggerated, especially for a hyena, but even for a human, it's going to be exaggerated in terms of how it looks. Just to kind of play up that expression a little bit more. But I really do like these little crinkles that happen in your face. And they especially happen if like the person is older, especially when your skin gets so thin it's like paper. I love that look of the paper skin. It's something I feel like I'm always chasing in terms of like how to sculpt it. Someday I'll figure it out. How to get those super subtle skin folds. I might have to take down this little fold that I love so much a little bit. I think it's a little too straight, but I do love it. So this is something I've been doing a lot of digital sculpting lately. When I move my tool like this and I kind of just like am able to do that, cannot figure out how to do that digitally. It drives me nuts because I'm like, oh, this would be so easy to do if it were traditional. But I just can't get those subtle like finger movements and how I manipulate the clay. So that's when people like say like, oh, digital sculpting's so easy, you just push a button and it works. It's like, no, it's a whole different animal. Parts of it are easy. Symmetry, for example. But some of that, those like little subtle tweaks, just can't do it digitally. Not the same way anyway. At least not that I can figure out. Maybe with the new Oculus sculpting. I've never done that. So I got this, I put this lump right here, and I don't know if I like that. I think I like that better. It's a bit more of a divot. Though I think I might, I don't know how to express it. Like when there's like say I got two pieces of like fatty tissue, like my palms here, pressed together, how it creates that quick slope where it's got a nice subtle wrinkle. I might go for more of that type of look. A little butt crack on the face. There we go. So I'm just considering this session as a way to revisit some of these forms since I've had a bit of a break from them. You know, figure out if I want to tweak them. And then before we start getting into like the final texturing, at some point I'll have to deal with that other ear. We'll cross that bridge later. Let's see, I need my spatula. See how I can kind of just like, I'm sort of smoothing it into the crack. Can't figure out how to do that digitally. All right. This might be too much. So we're going to hog it down a little bit. I don't know if I like it. Oof, I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about that. Because it doesn't come together quite as dramatically as that. It's like a clenched butt, and I don't want it to be a clenched butt. Use my butt analogy. Bear with me for being immature today, sorry. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm feeling that. Actually, I'm going to take down this, take down this side a little bit. So I'm kind of trying to mirror this form now. But again, subtle. Because this is the more relaxed side. Yeah, I'm not feeling the butt on this side. I don't know. Grumble, grumble. Let's see. I'm gonna guitar string this and then smooth it down with some alcohol just to see how it looks. Definitely not feeling that lump there. Let's smooth it down some more. And sometimes that's what sculpting is putting in something that you think will work and it does not. Don't force it though, because that's when you get into trouble. That's what I find. This is a weird spot because there's like not really an analogy on a human quite here because like it's going into the nose. Although I think that there might be some, even though this side's not nearly as snarly, there should be some wrinkling, I think, happening. I'll just make this side a little bit more severe and then so at this point we've mostly just taken steps backwards. And that's okay. I'm not thrilled with it, but that happens. And hopefully you can all see this. I don't know if I should lower my desk a little bit. So I'm kind of just using my spatula tool to round over this lump to see if I can get a little bit more of a tighter wrinkle there. Although I'm finding that it's a little bit too severe. I want it to go a little bit more sloped. I might be better off doing this with my W21 tool. That's this guy. So this is what I talk about when I say like refining. I'm just kind of scraping out some of those tool marks. And I'm using this tool to better define what I have going on there. So like, you know, I got this wrinkle right here. It's a little bit too heavy in this area, but I want it to be a little bit more defined up here. So it's just going in and making these real subtle tweaks, which no doubt I will go over later, and you won't see all that subtlety, but okay, I'm feeling a little bit better about that wrinkly area here. As I'm keeping this, make sure it's center. I'll be able to add like some subtlety into it. Now, with this tool, you don't want to dig around too much. Like, I am digging around too much, but that's how you break your tools. So just a heads up on that. Like, you can do some gouging here, but if you do it too much, you just have to be careful. And like these tools, I think this one costs like $5 each, but I have to buy them from California and then pay for shipping too, so it adds up. And it's just frustrating to break tools. Especially with these guys, like you kind of get used to one, and then if you break it, you have to go to a new one. And there's little differences. They're always a little bit different because they're handmade. Actually, I find that there's more variety, a little bit more individuality with the Kemper tools than with like Ken's tools. Not to, you know, not to bring up Ken again to talk about how great he is, but I do think he's got good quality control. So I'm going to switch to this tool. This is also a loop tool. It's just a lot stiffer, so I can really dig stuff out if I want. What I'm doing is just kind of adding in some of these wrinkles. I'm kind of trying to see how it looks if I go a little bit more subtle, like on a nose, human nose bridge. We'll get some alcohol going so I can start to see what I'm working with. Or I can just use, let me see if this works. These are all going to get textured later, so it's not like I don't need to look machine smooth. What I like about these clay or color shapers, whatever they are, is that they kind of emulate a fingertip, but they're much smaller. You can get more accurate. There we go. Now we're getting find some fun wrinkles. I just want to sculpt wrinkles all day long. So I'm noticing that with this wrinkle, I got a little bit too, this is real nitpicky, and I probably shouldn't even be this nitpicky at this point, but it was becoming a little bit too swollen. And it wasn't showing the weight of the wrinkle. And that's something you have to think about, is that even wrinkles, like, they have gravity. They have weight pulling down on them. So I'm trying to give this wrinkle, so like there'd be less fatty tissue. I don't know if you guys can see this here. Let's see if I can zoom. I cannot zoom. Well, there's like, there's less bulk up here and more bulk down here. And it goes for every single wrinkle. And you may be going, Micah, that's going to take forever. And the answer is yes. Yes, it will. This is when the sculpture starts getting, like, demanding, I guess. Like, when you do your initial block out, it's really fun because you see all this stuff coming to taking shape. And it's really exciting because it's like a character is coming to life. And now we're getting into the more tedious aspects of it, which are still good and important, and I still very much enjoy doing them. But it is more tedious, and it is probably less fun for you guys as viewers to watch. Nah, it's more fun, right? So lots of little scraping. I like this wrinkle. I kind of want to bring in a little bit more over here. I don't want it to look too machined either. So I found this old toothbrush. But that can be used to kind of rough up the surface a little bit. Just brushing my hyena. You just gotta be careful not to hit it with the plastic, but see, I did that right there. I gotta smooth that out. So this part right here I think would be more subtle, so I'm gonna kind of take out some of that crease. I'm just doing that with my guitar string tool. So I'm leaving the crease right here. I don't know if you can, maybe if I do that. I'm leaving the crease right here. I'm softening it up right here. And then I'm going to hit it again, but this time I'm going to do it with my chip brush, since I'm less likely to scuff it. So the toothbrush is softer. A little bit less dramatic lighting. Now the thing is that you don't want it to look too, how do I say this, manufactured, I guess. Like right now, I feel like these wrinkles look too sculptural, maybe. They don't look very natural, I don't think. So I'm kind of going to go back in there and soften them up in some places, harden them up in others. And pay attention to the angles of the wrinkles. It's like this one I feel like should have a little bit more clay on it. And that's the thing, when you start hitting it with like the alcohol and the brushes and stuff like that, you are going to wear away at the clay a little bit and you are going to lose some volume. So in some cases you might need to put it back in. This is where those angles all come in, like those little subtle planar shifts I always talk about. Like this one's almost like a 90-degree plane here. It maybe a little bit less, like 100-degree. And then it shifts right here to a flat. I think it might be too severe. I don't know. I'm not sure if I want to take it more or less. I'm going to settle it down a little bit, see if that does it. Hopefully that works. This is one of those things that, like, the more you sculpt, the more you'll start to see it, if you know what I mean. Like, you'll start to see how things need to shift in order to, like, right now I'm struggling a little bit, but maybe in like 2 years I'll be like, oh yeah, I should have just done that and would have been done with it. Would have had to play less. But like the more you do it, the more you start to understand like the forms and what needs to happen. And it makes a huge difference. It really does. Unfortunately, that just comes with time. I don't think there's any good way to rush it. If I figure it out, I'll let you know. I think that studies help a lot too. And like for me, even drawing helps. I used to, I've talked about this before in the live stream, but I used to be a painter. I went to school as an undergrad, I was a painting major, and as a grad student, when I went into grad school, I was a painting focus. So I have a huge background in painting, but my skills in painting have really kind of declined. So I don't get a lot of practice with it. But even so, like, nothing really beats the accessibility of sketching and being able to do it anywhere. So I still find that like sketching, even if I don't show any of my sketches, because a lot of them are pretty terrible. Whenever I post sketches on social media or whatever, they're usually my good sketches. I have a lot of crappy sketches. But my point being though is that they still help me find forms and understand the forms and understand these planar shifts and everything. And then I can bring that information back to my sculpting, and it really informs it. I'm going to add some like middle wrinkles. I don't know if there's a better word to put it. So it's like a wrinkle between a wrinkle. Like a divot. Like, so if you got a big wrinkle, sometimes they'll have like these sort of divots in them. Like, I think that's maybe what I want more here. Sorry. I don't know. I don't know if I should take this part of the wrinkle deeper or less deep. There's almost too much wrinkle right here. So I don't know if it reads very well on the camera. Maybe if I change the lighting a little bit. So I'm trying to soften up some of the between the skin here and then sharpen it up here, so it creates that sort of contrast of like the subtle wrinkles versus the sharp, where the skin's thinner and it overlaps more. Like underneath, well, at least with hyenas and dogs and cats and stuff like that, they have like these fatty pads here, and we do too. Humans do too. But you know, I want to have it read as a fatty pad, and like, I don't know. I'm trying to get these forms right. And then adding like some subtle mid wrinkles, so like where it kind of dips back in because it's getting folded. And I'm adding this back in with my big sculpting tool. I'll smooth it out again. And like I said, today's just about finding these sort of more subtle forms. And where wrinkles are sharp. Like in the olden days, like a few years ago when I started sculpting, I would always just carve in my wrinkles. And I think you can see that in some of my older tutorial videos. And it is a good method, it works. But now I try to find other ways of more subtly putting in those forms. So yes, there's going to be some wrinkles that I do have to carve in, but then there's also some that are, you know, more from two fatty surfaces meeting together and less from a line carved onto a flat surface. There's a lot you can do with this one tool. It's very versatile. Like, yes, I can use it to hog out a lot of material, which is usually what my go-to for is for it, but right now I'm getting some pretty subtle detail. don't know if I want that there or not. That'd be like a whisker dimple. I don't know. So what I'm seeing here that I don't really like is that these are all kind of at the same depth. And I feel like there needs to be a little bit more visual variety to sell it. So I'm going to kind of play around with that. Just to make it more interesting. I also need to keep in mind that these wrinkles, like, I'm getting super subtle with them. I don't know, I mean, this is going to be cast in resin, so we're going to lose some detail. Just by the nature of the molding and everything like that. But I want to make sure that even in less dramatic lighting, it's still going to read. So maybe I should be taking some more steps back here. So that's a good way to usually tell if it's going to read further back, is that you just take a step back. I know it looks very dramatic and cliche and artisty to like, oh, yeah, it's going, you know. But there really is a good reason to step back from your work. Yeah, see, I feel like I'm kind of losing that the weight of the skin folds here, because it kind of, I just kept on building up and building up, and as a result, it's a little too thick right here. Still want some volume here, though. Which I believe is the clay I added right when I walked in here today. Now I'm taking it out again. Push pull, push pull. You change one thing, you gotta change a lot of things. Yeah, I'm just trying to see here. Like this, I like this groove that we're getting here. But it's just not quite right. And that's the thing with skin, like it's almost never regular. Like nothing on skin happens at regular intervals. So like if you have wrinkles that are like each, 2 millimeters away from each other, it's going to look very machined and not natural. So that's kind of what I'm talking about, like having to break things up a little bit. Like even that, I still feel like that's a little too much clay there. I need to just hog some off a little bit. And that I'm not having enough of a slope. You know, talking about those planar shifts again, like yes, I'm building up wrinkles, but I'm building them up as a flat surface versus as a curved surface. You know, don't ever feel like your work's so precious that you can't just scrape it all off. If you see something's egregiously wrong, it's better to fix it. Because otherwise you're just going to see it every time you look at your piece. Oops. It's funny, earlier today, you know, I was posting about this live stream since I had to postpone it. The Shiflett brothers, who are wonderful, wonderful people, and I really can't say enough nice things about them either. They're two sculptors out of Texas that kind of had their start, I guess, like in the more like action figure, but not really. I don't know how to define it. I'm not doing their work any justice speaking about it, but their work is phenomenal, and they're even better people. Brandon and Jared Shiflett. But anyway, they were posting. They retweeted my post about this, which was I'm always grateful for that because they're, you know, it's so helpful in helping me be seen and everything. But they said that they liked my work ever since Face Off, and it was funny. I was thinking about Face Off and like, you know, at the time I thought I was a decent sculptor, but now the further I get from it, the more I look back on my work, I see so much wrong with it, and I think that's just the nature of being an artist. But it's funny looking back on it. I'm like, ooh, I haven't done that. Of course, when you're in the thick of it, your judgment is very skewed. You're unable to see, I think, after a certain point, because you don't get that distance from your piece that you would get in real life, you know, when you go home for the night. Because, I mean, yeah, you go home for the night, and then you get up and come right back, and you don't really get that piece to, like, sit and think about it, because it's so go, go, go. But yeah, there's some pieces I submitted on Face Off, and I remember defending them, you know, furiously when I was on the show, like, oh, that was a good piece, and blah, blah, blah. And now I look back and I'm like, ugh. There's a lot wrong with that. Oh, past me. But anyway, my point being, though, that you're always growing as an artist. And yeah, probably in a few years, I'll look back on this and be like, ugh. But even if you recognize that now you could do better, you know, it's no reason to hate. Yeah, like, I still like my work from Face Off. I still did some cool stuff, and some stuff really turned out. You know, it wouldn't be what I would do now, but it did turn out cool. And some stuff was pretty terrible. It's the nature of the beast. I remember when I was on season 10, I was talking with Mel Licata, who was one of the sweetest people also on the show. And she made a good point. She said something like, with all of the stress of the show and how quick our turnarounds are, it's kind of amazing that anything goes right. And she was dead on. Like, it is shocking that it works out at all. And part of that is due, I should just do a whole video session about Face Off. But a big part of that is due to the people who work on Face Off behind the scenes. Like, I've talked about it before, and I know that they don't really like us to ruin the movie magic, but we don't run our own foam on that show. Um, foam running, especially for prosthetics, is a very specific skill set, and I have done it. I can do it. It's difficult, and usually your first foam run on any piece is not that great. Just because your molds, like in real life, if you were running a mold for a prosthetic, you'd want to bake out your mold first, which means that you basically heat up your mold and let it dry out completely, like in the oven overnight, before ever letting any latex touch it. But obviously, with the time constraints of Face Off, we don't have time to do that. So they're working with the foam runners are working with shitty mold. I mean, there's shitty molds. Like those molds, like we're cutting every corner that we can to get it done in time. Because like if I'm running a mold in like real life, like I want to take a whole day just to, build up my mold wall and have it be a good mold. And that takes time. On Face Off, it's just like, okay, you just got to get one run out of it. It's going to be the shittiest mold ever. And that's how it goes. But those foam runners, like they had to work with that, and they did an amazing job. And yeah, the foam pieces, like, of course they could have been better, but they were working with really crappy molds that hadn't been baked out. Given what they're working with, it's pretty amazing. When we'd have to turn in our molds at the end of the day, I'd always write, sorry. My molds always felt so bad. So they were full of like harsh edges and ugh, it was a mess. Anyway, it's amazing that anything went right. That was the point of that story. But yeah, looking back, like there's certain things that I do with all my sculpts that I catch myself doing now a little bit more. Like my biggest problem, I think, is not letting there be weight to wrinkles and stuff like that. So, and you can really see it on some of my earlier sculpts, especially the ones on Face Off. Like the jowls around the mouths are not ever weighted enough, and I think it shows. And I'm more conscious of it now, but if I'm not paying attention, I will definitely make things too poofy. I should have used the guitar string tool on that. So let's see, we spent about an hour so far on just these wrinkles. Like I said, this is the part that just, it takes forever. And like I said, I'm just trying to get these forms more subtle, but I still have a lot of tool marks there. Let's see if I can whittle them down a little bit more. And in real life, like if I were sculpting this, like not on video, this would be when I would just put on like a show in the background that I've probably seen a million times, either The Office or Hannibal, and just pick at these wrinkles until they were right. I mean, a certain amount of it is just about having pride in your work. Like if you know you're capable of doing better, it hurts to turn something subpar, even if you're just doing it for yourself. For example, I was doing these foot normals prompts this month. I had Sculpt November. And last night I turned in the one for The prompt was ancient. And I did sort of a fallen king Degrar kind of character. And it was about, I don't know, 1:30. Okay, first of all, about me, you need to understand, I go to bed really early because I get up pretty early and I usually have to go run and get the kid ready for school and stuff. So I was up to about 1:30 last night working on this sculpt, which for me is pretty late. Because I'm old and I want to go to bed at 9. And it just got to the point where I'm just like, I gotta just turn this in because I'm tired and I need to go to sleep. And this is not as important as getting some rest and getting off to a good start tomorrow. So anyway, I turned in the Durgar and I posted them and everything like that. But I know it's not my best work. I think it's got some good ideas and a good foundation, but it's not finished. It's not like, it's not where I want it to be. So if you're on my social media and you see that piece, I'm probably going to go back to it eventually. Well, maybe. I don't know. I always say I'm going to go back to these pieces and then I never do. But I kind of do want to finish that one and make it into like a little bust or something. It'd be fun to paint. But I think taking pride in your work is very important. I try not to share things until I'm proud of them. Even if like it's a work in progress, if I'm proud of the work that I've done so far and I feel like it's coming along, then I'll share it. And that's, I think, why Face Off is, like why I haven't ever watched my season again. Because there's a lot of work on that I'm not proud. I mean, I'm proud that I went through the experience and I'm proud that I stepped up to that challenge. But the work itself is not my best work, obviously. Just trying to find some of these like subtler forms. I say subtler forms as I just took a big gouge out of the sculpture. My problem is also sometimes like I either go too weighted or too soft. I have a hard time finding that happy medium. And you do want to over sculpt a little bit. It just helps things to read better when you paint them. Especially like this where it's more exaggerated. If it were like 100% lifelike, like if I were doing a likeness, like a makeup piece maybe that was going to be cast in silicone, I could go a little bit more subtle. But sometimes I think I go too subtle. But sometimes I just really like that subtlety. Like right now I'm just like, oh, these marks are blending together and it looks beautiful. Trying to figure out what I want to do with this musculature here. Should have brought my anatomy book down. I usually like to have an anatomy book close by. I have an anatomy app on my phone, but I'm using my phone to record, so that doesn't do me any good. It's like sort of this divot back here behind their eye. And I don't think it'll read on this side because of the wrinkles, but I can certainly put it on this side. Well, I kind of have it on this side. Never did find those eye forms. I don't know if I want to bring this eye wrinkle into the eyelid. Give it more of that wild-eyed sort of expression. One thing I found is that making the eyelids at least an eighth of an inch deep helps a lot when you're like cutting them out. Like if you're going to set glass eyes in or something. If you give yourself a little bit more depth to work with, it does help. Because usually then what I would do if I were going to finish this is I would, make a cast in resin, and then I'd take a Dremel and I'd drill out all the bits that, either going to replace or, trim the edges and add some places to see and breathing holes and stuff like that. And I do find that if the eyelids are just a touch thicker, it does make life easier. Oftentimes when you're putting eyeballs in to one of these things, like if you are like putting glass eyes in, you're going to have to putty it back anyway. Like I use epoxy sculpt to like kind of resculpt the eyelids. But if I have a good guideline to work with, it helps. Eventually I'm going to need to lay this down and really look at all my I want to say like undercuts, I guess, but they're not really undercuts. All the stuff that's below my line of vision, make sure it's clean. No holes or tunnels that cause problems during molding. All right, let me smooth this out. The nice thing about the alcohol versus like dolimamine, besides the lack of alcohol will inhibit your cure too. I should say that, but it will also flash off a lot faster, and that's what's nice about it over dolimamine, is that it does flash off, and by flash off I mean like evaporate. I'm using 99% alcohol, so it's super duper gonna evaporate faster. But you don't leave behind any residue in your sculpture. I feel like with the dolimamine, even if you like reuse your clay, you're gonna have some in it. I think it does. It's supposed to evaporate eventually, but it takes a while. So hopefully you can see that. We're getting some nice subtle forms. And ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to prep this up for doing some texture work. So like skin texturing, wrinkles, more wrinkles. Eventually like to add in like super duper subtle wrinkles, like those paper thin wrinkles. Although we're starting to get kind of some of those in there. I'm getting too subtle right now. I probably should save this for a little bit later, but I do love this tool. It's just very versatile. So right now I'm basically using it to kind of burnish the edge of these wrinkles. And get some of these like forms in. Take out some of my other tool marks. Of course, that face-off, we wouldn't have had the time to work with this kind of level of precision. The sculpts are very rough. And I will say, like, on my time on season 11 with the All-Stars, Tyler and Emily really were consistently doing amazing work, and it was because they cut corners on their sculptures, and then they corrected it in paint. And that's the thing, is like you can hide a lot in paint. Now, with these kind of sculptures, like the one I'm working on right now, obviously I have time to really, bring it to where I want to see it and, address all those little micro details that I want to get to. And as a result, it'll be easier for whoever decides to paint this. because I mostly sell blanks. That being said, if you know how to paint, you can do a lot. And I'll talk, a little bit about it, but like Rick Baker at Monsterpalooza 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I don't know. It's been so long. He did this great Nosferatu vampire piece. And it was so realistic. And he did it with paper mache because he's really incredibly talented and kind of bonkers, I think. Like he's versatile with any material. Anyway, my point though is that he did it with paper mache, and he did do some of the subtle texturing, but he had all these like little micro wrinkles and everything like that. And the truth is that he just recreated that in paint. And it read from a distance, it read really well, and you would not know that they weren't sculpted unless you got right up on top of it and looked, maybe even felt it. So you can save a lot in paint. And that's why I think that Emily and Tyler's technique was really smart for that show. And that's also where I think my ego got in the way, because like I'm just like, I can't not sculpt this stuff. I need to sculpt it. So as a result, like they usually busted out their sculpture the first day, and then they had the second day to pre-paint, and they could do phenomenal paint jobs. And then application stuff was easier. I mean, they're also just really good artists. I'm not trying to sell them short or anything. They're really good at what they do. See, I'm getting too little noodly with the details right now. And as a result, I'm losing some of the bigger details. So I'm going to need to kind of switch back to my guitar string tool and figure this out. So I don't know if you can see here, I'm like trying to add in these sort of like, the way that the wrinkles sort of like create a fold almost. This is the stuff I really like doing though. It's like just finding these little notes. I do really like this snarl. It's fun. Eventually, well, let's do it. Oh, just right now, I'm just checking to see that the nose wrinkles I have in here are lining up. That again, like the anatomy is going to be subtler on the my left, the hyena's right. But all the anatomy still needs to be symmetrical. So I'm just kind of making sure that these nose wrinkles are lining up. I almost feel like this one is coming a little bit more. He's gonna sneeze. My old girl, she does this thing where when she sneezes, sometimes she bonks her head on the ground because she sneezes so emphatically. But then when she bonks her face on the ground, she bonks her nose. And so it makes her sneeze more. So it's just like this cycle of sneezing and bonking. It's adorable. She's not getting hurt. I mean, I don't want you all to think I'm just being mean. But yeah, it is very cute. I think I have this one reference photo on my photos referenced it like 3 or 4 times now. Should probably clean up my references a little. So I'm just adding a little skin fold around the, I don't know if you can see it, around the edge of the nostril. I feel like the nostril has a little bit more of an S shape to it. So I'm just going to add that back in. They don't really have a ton of texture on their nose, it looks like. I mean, they do. It's not super duper like. I mean, I might be able to get away with just using the sponge. Oh, it's just been a mess. Someday I need to be in a situation where I can pet a hyena. That's just my goal with all animals. I just want to pet everything. This is just very subtle form finding. I'm noticing that like they have this rather large, I don't know what you'd call it, like overlap on the bottom part of their snoot. I'm just trying to make that a little bit more obvious, so I need to cut this in a little bit more. Especially on this side, because this side would be pulled up a little bit. I'm just kind of adding a little bit more texture around the whisker bumps. It's subtle, but I think it'll help them read a little bit better. It's basically what it's doing is it's creating more of a shadow. So there's not like actually holes here for the whiskers. It's just, it's just a divot. But if you have that light playing on top of it, it really helps sell it. You have to be a little bit careful with this chip brush method of smoothing, just because it is very easy to wipe out your details. So like sometimes I'm pressing and sometimes I'm more just brushing it over the surface. And sometimes you're just going to have to go in with a finer paintbrush and really smooth things out. Or like even like these little areas of the on the nostrils. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get in there with a rubber tip tool probably. Call it some of these bristles too. You can tell when your chip brush is kind of on its way out because it leaks bristles everywhere. I don't need to get it perfectly smooth because, we're still going to add some texture here. Where's my little brush? Hmm. Sorry, I'm just kind of trying to fill out some of these details on the nose. I'm not really happy with how the nostril's not specific enough, but I might be just overthinking it. Because it's like, you have to think about it in terms of like material. Like, the skin of the head is going to have different thicknesses than the skin on the nose. Right now I feel like the nose is reading as too thin. More like the skin around the eyes, because that's what I was just sculpting. Instead of thicker like the skin on the nose. Put this little booger in there. Kind of want it to curve back in on itself a little bit more. All right. Brush. A brush that's dying. Oops. Probably shouldn't have done that. Oh, I have a stool. I'm just going to step up so I can get a little bit better angle on the sculpture, hopefully. Because sometimes it just helps to really look at something in a different way. Also, it really helps you see if you got like some major asymmetries that you need to deal with. And again, it's better to deal with them earlier. And bonk your head on the lamp. So you can't really tell from the video, I guess, but like right now I'm standing on a stool and looking down on my sculpture and trying to sort out these wrinkles a little bit. And I'm trying to figure out if I want to pull this nostril. I gotta stop bonking my lamp. I want to figure out if I'm trying to pull this nostril over or not. Because it is less snarly, but it is still a little bit snarly. So I think I want to move it over just a smidge, but like not significantly. I'm just kind of smoothing out my marks with my finger. The reference that I'm looking at, which is that mom chastising her child again, it does kind of look like the nose almost twists a little bit. I'm trying to see if I can do that and have it make sense. Mine isn't quite as exaggerated as of an expression. Ironically, I think that was possible. So I don't want to push it too hard. This is like one of those details that no one's ever gonna notice. Unless you do it wrong, and then everyone will notice. Probably need to start thinking about wrapping it up here. Hopefully, although I doubt it, the way things have been going, I'll get a chance to address that ear this week. And or the mouth. So you don't have to watch all those details. Although, I don't know, I was thinking about it earlier today. It might be helpful for y'all. I don't know if it will, but like to see how I handle translating symmetry over from one side to the other. So if you want to see that, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just do it on the side someday. Maybe, I don't know. So I'm just trying to get these, like, it's almost like the snarl kind of tips the nose a little bit. It creates these sort of wrinkles that go across the midline. And I'm wondering if I can successfully pull that off. I feel like it's one of those sort of strange looks that you see it in real life and you're like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. But when you see it on a sculpture, you go, oh no, that's fake. So I'm trying to see if I can push past that. Oof, this is hurting my back though. I'm like standing on a chair but leaning way over my sculpture. And the older I get, the more back pain becomes a very real thing. Let's see here. Just trying to exaggerate this line a little bit. It's hard to tell how well it's reading. Partially because my gigantic head's in the way of the light. Not really satisfied with that. See if I can mush it with my brush. Probably just gonna get this cleaned up and then we'll stop for the day. Didn't make it quite as far as I'd hoped, but I feel like that's pretty normal for me. Should bring the sprinkle down a little bit more. Okay, it's looking okay. I don't know how much you can see on it. Here, see if I can show you on the camera. So this is what I was working on. This nose part here. Trying to get the light to show, but specifically this wrinkle. Like, I don't know if I can pull this in and have it be successful. I think I need more of a divot in here, but that'll be something to tackle for next time probably. Anyway, here we go. All right, some dramatically lit Gnoll for you. Alrighty, well, thank you for joining in today. And sorry we didn't get a little bit further, but this is, like I said, this part's the tedious part. This is the smooth everything out, make it look fancy before we ruin it with texture. And we're going to lose a lot of this. Like, I don't know if you can see this texture here. It's kind of just left over from the tool marks and then brushing it. That's going to go away when we start doing the actual texturing. So I'm not too worried about it yet, but the perfectionist in me wants to clean it up. Anyway, so next week, I guess, probably more of the same. Probably just be working on more of the details. Hopefully I will get a chance to tackle this ear, because I do want to see it. I'm worried that this one might be too big, but I want to see them together before I make any adjustments. If you have any questions about anything I've done today, you know, post them on the Patreon so I can answer them. And if there's ever anything you want me to answer on tape, like the next time, let me know, and I'd be happy to do that. And just again, I know I answered this everywhere, and I know it sounds kind of cliche, but I really just do want to thank you. Your Patreon support means a lot to me, and it really helps me, you know, further my own education, and you know, purchase the supplies that I need, and just generally make upgrades to my workspace. So I really do appreciate that. It helps me a ton. Thank you very much, and I hope that you all have a great rest of your weekend. I will see you next week. Oops, I got to turn it off over here. Sorry, long arm. All right, goodbye, y'all.